Isaiah chapter 7 and John chapter 1 are the two passages we'll be reading and putting in conversation together. Isaiah chapter 7, verses 10 through 14. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or the highest heights. But Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, Hear now, you house of David. Is it not enough that you try the patience of humans? Will you now try the patience of God also? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin, I don't know what I did. Hear now, house of David. Is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you now test and try the patience of God also? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. Then John chapter 1, verses 9 through 14. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave them the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. This is the word of the Lord. So, it's a king named Ahaz. He is the king of the southern tribes of Israel. The southern tribes, which is primarily the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, they had control over Jerusalem. And then the northern tribes. And the northern tribes had seen growing Assyria and made a partnership with Syria. It's confusing, I know. Assyria, big empire that within the next 10 years would conquer the northern tribes. And then little Syria and the tribes of the north coming together to recruit the south, come fight with us, stand together, stand with us against Assyria. And Ahaz played the political game and said, I like my chances with Assyria. We're Jerusalem, we're a city on a hill, we're a walled city. We're not on their radar. You guys are. You guys control the trade route that goes through western Israel, connecting Egypt from the south to Assyria in the north. You have strategic value. They're going to leave us alone. So they attack Ahaz. They attack the southern tribes, the divided Israel at civil war with itself, and Syria coming in and joining the northern tribes, and they fail. They fail because, as previously mentioned, Jerusalem sits on a hill and is walled. And if you are going to do battle against a walled city on a hill, you're going to lose a lot of people or you're going to lose. And they lost. So Ahaz knows what's coming next. What do you do to a walled city on a hill? You besiege it. You cut off water, you cut off food, and you just wait them to starve to death and to die of dehydration. Eventually, from within, they say, enough of this. We'll take our chances with these other guys, and then the gates open, and you can take a city with relatively low casualties. You just have to wait it out. And so, what is Ahaz doing? He is out there inspecting the water supply. If you are a city on a hill, you can stockpile food. Water is harder to stockpile. It's more necessary. You can go a couple days without food. You can't go very long without water. They live in a place that doesn't have dependable rainfall. And so he is out there looking at the water flow to make sure that they have enough water, knowing that that's their biggest vulnerability. And he's worried. He's thinking about, what's this siege going to come? Are we going to survive? In casting my lot with Assyria, did I make the right decision? And he hears a voice, the voice of God saying, ask me for a sign. I don't know if that worked, but you get the point. Just a little theatrics from your boy up here. And so he's pacing, wondering what to do, and then God says, ask me for a sign. And what does Ahaz say? If you would think a desperate king facing the fate of war would say, give me a sign. How many times have you prayed for a sign? And God says, ask for a sign. And Ahaz says, you're trying to trick me. I know what this is. I will, and he's somewhat piously, I will not ask you for a sign. I will not put you to the test. And Isaiah's there too. And Isaiah is like, you guys just don't get it. It's like, let me tell you what the sign is. The sign is, a virgin will conceive a child. His name will be Emmanuel, which means God with us. The sign is that God's with us. No, that's not the sign. The sign is a virgin conceiving a child. The meaning of the sign is to tell Israel God's with you. God is with you. God is coming to dwell with you. God's with his people. And if you think about it, you have a dog, and you ever like spill a scrap of food? You're like, come over here, Moose, or Dolly, or whatever your dogs are named, and the dog comes over, and it's like literally standing on top of the food, and you point at the food, it's like, there's some food. And they stare at your finger, and they're like, oh. And you're like, I didn't call you over to stare at my finger. It's a sign that points you to the thing that you need and that you're looking for, which is always food for dogs. And what Isaiah says to Ahaz is the sign, the finger of God pointing, is only I can do this. That's the sign. Only God can bring a child any other way than the normal way. Talk to your parents about what the normal way is. But other than that, God has to intervene and bring life into the world. Some would argue that is always the case. But in this case, it's a virgin. And what Isaiah tells Ahaz is the sign points you to God being with us. God with us. The sign, what only God can do, God is with us. Emmanuel, this is, of course, is a title for Jesus, that Jesus is the Emmanuel. Jesus is the ultimate sense that God is with us, that when John tells the story of God dwelling among us, the literal verb he uses there is tabernacled, that God came and tabernacled, God who lived in a tabernacle as Israel wandered through the desert, God who lived in a tabernacle up through the time of Solomon as a sign of solidarity with them as they were in between places, as they were a nomadic people. And as people were in exile, that God is saying, I am still with my people. But now, through a child born, Emmanuel. And of course, John tells us a little bit more about that. The Word was made flesh and tabernacled with his people. The Word made flesh and tabernacled with them. And even though people did not recognize their Creator, even though they could not see the light had come into the world, still John tells us in this introductory prologue to his gospel that he took on flesh, not as some of the people steeped in Plato may have thought of an immaterial God coming to have the illusion of being a person, but no, he lived the full, complete, total human experience with us. The Word made flesh. Pop quiz. In Greek, what is the word translated as a word there? Logos. Good job. Some amateur Bible people in here, including myself. Logos. The word translated here is the word logos. And so if you think about words as suitcases, and a word is a suitcase that has inside of it meaning. Words are just symbols, right? They're just arbitrary. My kids ask me all the time. Like yesterday, Winnie said, who invented cuss words? And I said, I don't know. Probably some middle schooler somewhere. I don't know the answer to that question. But words are symbolic, right? Even swear words. The only reason that we consider that is because we've put in them some inappropriate things into that suitcase. And logos is a word that if you filled the suitcase with meaning, you would not be able to pick it up. If you went to fly in an airplane and got it in there, the person would go to pick it up and be like, whoa, hey man, this isn't flying with you today. This suitcase is too heavy. You need to take some things out of it. And why did you pack so much anyway? You return tickets tomorrow. The idea of logos is one of those words that is rich and full of meaning, particularly to John's original hearers. When they heard that word, as in the Greek language, as people that, even though Greece had fallen and become Rome, they all would have known Plato. They would have known Socrates. They would have known this school of philosophy that the word logos held a lot of weight and meaning to it. Plato, in his Republic, talked about logos extensively. And when he talked about logos in his book, it took it to mean logos meant, I just said the word in its definition, which is not helpful. Logic, reason. If you think about what is it, if you thought about all the differences between you and the dog I mentioned earlier, what differentiates you from an animal? What words would you use to describe what differentiates humans from every other animal? Some of the things you would think about would be probably first and foremost consciousness, logic, reason. You're a question asker. You're a learner. With Plato talking about logos, he's talking about beauty, truth, justice, goodness. And of course he's a philosopher, so he thinks that philosophy is the greatest of all disciplines. But all that drives, energizes philosophy. Why we love talking about ideas. This sense that exploring ideas can lead us towards the good life, the better life. He in his book, The Republic, he talks about the allegory. That's where he has the allegory of the cave, where humanity is chained in a cave against a wall, and behind them there's a fire burning, and things pass in front of the fire, and when they do, you can see the shadows on the wall. And what Plato is saying, what we see as reality is actually not reality. It's just the shadow we see across walking in front of a fire. That's just the material world. What we need to do, and of course, he's selling the goods to escape the shackles in the cave and to get outside into the sunlight and see reality as it is. All those ideas is packed in the suitcase of the word logos. So when John takes this wording and uses it to describe Jesus, he's on the one hand saying all that desire for truth, beauty, and goodness, this idea of the arc of justice being long but bent, the arc of history being long but bent towards justice. What is bending the line? What is it that unites us in beauty and truth? All those things are reconciled in the person of Jesus, but then to push against Socrates, saying, but the word took on flesh. It entered into the material world and affirmed the material world through the resurrection. So the first piece of logos is the big, grand questions of meaning and purpose. The ways that when we think about righteous, good living, that across space and time and history and all around the world, that there are some things that we agree upon. Who wrote those laws? Who created reality? Who made things in a particular way that we can discover? John says, that's the logos. That's the logos. That's Jesus who took on flesh to show us what is good, what is beautiful, and what makes a life worth living. What Jesus says, what the great philosophers of the golden age of philosophy were searching for, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And what John says, not only that, is that the world was made how? Through Jesus. So let me pause here, give you a little caveat, and then jump into creation. Okay? Ready for the caveat? Science tells us the universe as a whole is about 13.8 billion years old. And his birthday was last week, which is interesting. I'm just kidding. Nobody knows when his birthday is. But it's a guess. It's somewhere in the neighborhood, probably a little bit more than 13.8 billion years old. And a lot of us grew up and believe that the Earth is probably between, some say 6,000 years old, some say 8, maybe 10. And I want to say, if you hold that belief, you can still listen to what I'm going to say. And because if God did make the universe, and this is a relatively young Earth, then there are still processes and things that are in motion so that everything I said is still true. Let me give you an example. How long does it take the lights of most stars to get here? Hundreds of thousands of years. In some case, that there's stars that are a million light years away, and we see their light. And what a light year means is that's how long it takes the light that traveled from that star to us can take hundreds of thousands of years. So if God created the world relatively young, then he had to have sped those things along, which means the processes were still in place from the beginning, okay? So I just don't want to lose you if you want to hold on to that view. That is definitely an orthodox view that many have held, and I just want to be inclusive to all of us today, okay? So Earth is, as science tells us, something like 13.8 billion years old. And what began the universe was all of the universe was all the subatomic particles that make up the substance of the universe were compressed into a small singularity. And I was reading about singularities because I'm like, what does that word mean? And what singularity means is something happening that's unique and that science has no explanation for. Okay, so this is a singularity, which basically means we don't know, other than it was compressed to a small point, and all the particles that make up the atoms and the molecules of the world, all those subatomic little particles, were all compressed. That's one of the laws of science, is the conservation of energy, which means that the amount of particles and energy in the universe is a constant. It's always been the same for its whole history. So everything, the chair you're sitting in, the body you inhabit, all those particles are 13.8 billion years old and existed in this singularity that I could hold in my hand if the gravitational pull of an infinitely dense speck wasn't so strong that we would destroy all of our solar system and universe. So with that caveat aside, everything begins there, and then what happens? An explosive, and here you got to give credit to science for their marketing, there was a big bang. And all of the particles of the universe from that singular point instantly in every direction spread out. So these are just particles. They have they only have potential. And pretty quickly, within a few minutes, some of those particles are like, this is lonely hurtling through space all alone. You want to hang out? And another particle says, we should hang out. And they form something called hydrogen. And some other particles were like, I'm not really interested in the properties of hydrogen. Want to try helium? And so they come together and they form helium. That was a helium joke. Those are the two most basic atoms in the universe. And as they're spreading out the hydrogen and the helium, after creating something new together with different distinct properties, they say to each other, what if we got together hydrogen and helium? What if we started to hang out? And guess what they formed? Stars. Stars are 98% hydrogen and helium. So as the universe is starting to cool down a little bit, after 300,000 years, the universe is about 10,000 degrees, which is the same temperature as the surface of the sun. They begin to form more complex structures. And in suns, in the furnace of the sun, heavier elements begin to emerge. These atoms are becoming molecules, and these molecules are becoming things like carbon, which turns out is pretty important to life, things like carbon. But they're trapped in a sun. What's carbon going to do inside of a sun? They're like, you want to get out of here? And they're like, yeah, I want to get out of here. And like, remember when you're trapped in that little tiny singularity? Like, what if we exploded a sun? And so the suns begin to explode after, 400 million years until they form. and then about 1 billion years later, into the life of the universe, the suns explode, releasing new things into the universe. And then after 1 billion years, those things start to say, it wasn't so bad inside the sun. Maybe we should come together and form something new. And then planets begin to form, and then they're trapped in the gravities of suns. And being trapped in those gravities provide a certain stability. And in some places, life begins to emerge. And in our little floating rock trapped in the orbit of a star we call the sun, after 13 billion years, things start to emerge. Life starts to emerge, starting really small, as the universe always does, but growing in greater complexity, coming out of the ooze into land, learning and adapting to land. And slowly, over time, finally, humans arrive. And if you take 13.8 billion years as the life of the universe, and you do a ratio so that the amount of time of 13.8 billion years is compressed into a single day, humans arrive into the universe 1 second before midnight. So we're relatively new to the universe, to the game. And we've got some things unique about us, some things that Plato tried to describe with the word logos. But we quickly adapt, discover fire. There's a great Far Side cartoon of an alien talking to a prehistoric person. And the prehistoric person says, so let me get this right. You traveled 1 million light years to tell us that if we stick meat in the fire, it tastes better? All right, mental note. Retelling cartoons doesn't always land. And so we move and we create fire, we create tools, we begin to organize better, we hunt, we gather, we create architecture and culture, we discover chocolate, we become and form a band and call ourselves the Beatles, we invent air travel and we begin to explore the world around us in there. This is a weird story of things starting in a small compressed point and exploding outward. It's a story of particles, potentials, bits of energy coming together to create something new. It's things new being born like stars, and those stars dying, but releasing more things into the universe, so that when Taylor Swift says that you're stardust, technically, she's right. The matter that makes up you was once inside a dying star. It's a bizarre story, but there's a through line through this story of things becoming more organized, of life emerging from death, of new things forming with new properties, hydrogen coming together in two parts with oxygen to form something called water that looks nothing like hydrogen nor oxygen, but in combining together forms water. And if you think about that, one of the questions that emerges is, what is it that's propelling things towards order, towards life? We all know the second law of thermodynamics. I don't even need to tell you that things fall apart. The center does not hold, that there's something about the way the universe is prone and tends towards decay. So what is it that is bringing things together? When you go to Yosemite Valley and you look at something that is so shockingly beautiful, when I stood on the valley floor for the first time, embarrassingly, about 6 years ago, I was filled with wonder and beauty. What is it that causes the ocean? You can go snorkeling and swim in the ocean and see in this salty place, life emerges. You go to the desert and you see this dry, arid place with plants and animals that have learned and adapted to conserve water and to thrive even there. You can go to the mountains, ski down a slope, and say, this is really fun and beautiful. And that's just in our state, which is, well, in fact, the best state to live in. But in there, as you walk through the world and think, what brought into the world Yosemite Valley? Hey Jude. chocolate, coffee, friendship, all the matters of the material of the world. What is it that brought order to disorder? John says it's the Logos that creates this order. It's the Logos that created all things together, brought them towards unity, bonding. Subatomic particles becoming atoms, becoming molecules, having new things, stars expanding, giving off heat. Is it fusion or fission? Fusion, right? It's one of those two, and I think so the earth, so it's whatever's giving, because the sun is giving. It's giving away energy. It's decaying. It's dying until it explodes, and then its last explosion gives new things to the universe to begin to build new materials. It's like those little particles or an ocean of Legos that can be put together in any number of interesting ways. Who's putting those Legos together? John says it is the Logos that drives creation towards order, beauty, diversity, and goodness. Ahaz was worried because he'd made an alliance with Assyria against Syria and the northern tribes. And he was wandering around, looking at the water, thinking, what am I to do next? And Isaiah says, there will be a sign. Emmanuel, God is with you. And when you see that sign, which John expands to say, the Logos, the creative force behind the energy, the Logos, what philosophers are searching for beauty and truth, will take on flesh and live among you. What troubles you, Ahaz? Do not worry, for a sign has been given. Emmanuel, God is with us. So what troubles you this Christmas? What fills your heart with fear? I have good news for you this few days before Christmas. The Logos has come to us, and he has a message for you this morning. Hear the word of the Logos made flesh, Jesus Christ. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, we'll give him a snake. If you then, though you're evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. The Logos became flesh, dwelt among us. He came and said to us this Christmas and every day of the year, do not worry about tomorrow. It has enough troubles of its own. And if you're like Ahaz and prone to say, yeah, but I kind of want to busy myself over here to try to protect myself, and I kind of don't trust God when he comes to me and says, he's got a sign for me. What Isaiah has to say to us is, God is with you. So come to the table this Sunday before Christmas. For what was forged in the stars became flesh and made his dwelling among us. It is now broken on the table for you. For the Logos that made all things possible, and the Logos that makes all of life worth living, now lives in you, and you have nothing to fear this Christmas. Let's pray as we come to the table. Father, it is scarcely comprehensible that you would come to us. And as we've spent just a few minutes considering the order of the universe, the power of your word to bring new things into being, Lord, all that we can say as we prepare our hearts for Christmas, as we prepare our hearts to receive Christ as he came to us 2,000 years ago, in anticipation of when he comes again to make all things new. Fill our hearts with hope, courage, faith, all that is appropriate to respond to the Creator coming among us and giving us the power to be part of your family. Thank you for Jesus this Christmas, and it's in his name we pray. Amen. Come to the table.